Hi, this is Marie with Creations, Photography, and Design. And today I'm going to talk about masking difficult images. Now, the best image you can mask is on a solid color background, presumably with lots of contrast between what you're trying to mask and the background. Now, I got this model, curly haired girl from something or another, directly from Adobe stock, and she is, as you can see, on a white background. Now, I never ever, and call me retentive, but I very seldom use images just exactly as they are. I think there's some problems here. She's got shiny spots, she's got some dark areas. So I went into Adobe Camera Raw and tried to smooth out her skin tones and give more detail in her hair. And sure enough, we've managed to do that. I think this looks better. This is a personal decision. Now, as you've probably figured out, way back in the early days of Photoshop, we had, when we masked, Refine Edge. And it was really a nice thing. And we lost it, I think, in Photoshop CC 2015. But there was a way you could still get to it. You could hold down your Shift key, and when you went to select, and mask, it would come out the Refine Edge. Well, that little unknown shortcut has disappeared if you're using CC 2018, which is sad, really sad, because I hate to give up things that I like and that they work. But I must say, in 2018 version of Photoshop, they have really made the refine and or the select and mask much better. It's more like the old Refine Edge in the way it works. So I decided I might as well learn how to use it since I don't have anything else. Let's start with basically, now I am going to credit this little detail to Dave Cross. He has taught me much of what I know about Photoshop. And he says that if you have something you want to mask that's partly smooth, like this model's shoulders and back, and partly fluffy, like her hair, the best thing to do is make two masks, one for the skin and one for the hair. So we are going to tap Control or Command J to make a duplicate of this smart object image. And for the time being, we're just going to turn off this top layer and work on the bottom layer. I'm going to grab my quick selection tool by tapping W. And it's not my favorite tool. It always gives me a rough edge, but it's the best Photoshop has at the moment. So I'm just going to drag around her shoulders, her back. I'm going to, along here, her edge. I'm also going to include just a little bit of her face. Now, if it goes farther than I want, I can always hold down my Alt or my Option key to get rid of the selection that I didn't want. Now, in order to check this really quickly, I'll hit the Q key, which brings me into my quick mask mode, which shows me, because I have set it that way, that the color shows what I have selected. And if we zoom in by tapping the Z key and moving our little magnifying glass to the lower right, we can zoom in and we can see, well, there's a little problem here. There's where it hasn't been able to distinguish between the hair and the shoulder. And what we can do is we can get a brush, and using a white brush to get rid of the color. So I'll need to tap my X key to get white as my foreground color. I can just really quickly move around and, oh, here's another place where it didn't quite come out the way I wanted to. And I have found that this is a problem in the image and not in the selection process. And here, now let me zoom just a little bit more right here. Now I'm holding down and keep holding down the Z key so I can zoom in, but when I come back, I'm right back at my brush. Now the easiest way for me to get this out, rather than try to make my brush really tiny, is to brush into the straight area, then tap my X key, and then I can click here, hold down my shift key, and click at the bottom. And now I have a nice sharp corner. Okay, so looks like it's pretty good, and that's all we really need to do because we can refine it later. I'll tap Q again, and then I'll add a layer mask on the top of this. Now, I'm working on I have a white background here, so because I find it easier to work on a color than it is to work on nothing. But when we uncolor it here, you can see there around the edge, just a little rim light, and you'll notice it's kind of on the blue side. So that limits my background just a little bit to something in the blue shades. We'll look more into that later. Well, let's zoom in, and again, I'm holding down my Z key while I move to this bottom left. Now we've got some gooey ooeyes here, but remember this is where her hair is, and we needn't be too concerned about this. Over here where we start seeing this blue shadow, there's a little problem here. Now this divot, there's no way we can fix it well in select and mask. So I'm going to take my white brush. Okay, where's that white brush? And I'm going to click. I have a hard edge brush, so I can click right on the edge and then shift click to get rid of that divot. Is there anything else that's going to give me any problems? Well, right here, and this bothers me just a little bit, and people say I'm too attentive to details. Now I'm going to tap the X key so I can get my black brush, and I'm going to just get rid of this extra hair that got selected that we missed when we were looking at quick mask. Now I'll tap to the X and see if I can get rid of this divot here. Boy, that doesn't really look good, so I'm going to go tap X to get black again. I'm going to click here and then shift click up into here so I get a nice smooth edge. Okay, remember this is all the stuff here with the hair. We don't need to worry too much about it. If it really bothers you, go ahead and fix it. Okay, now let's see. I think I'm going to I want to look at one of her shoulders because it's not as smooth as I might like. And I'm going to look at this area right here. Now I'm going to double click on the mask and we get the refine, sorry, it's not called refine edge anymore. It's called select and mask. And what I'm going to do here is just see if the smooth, and it takes a while to catch up because this is a big file. If I can move the smooth to the right, and I think it's better than it was. Let's look over here. We'll say okay. And then we can Control Z. Here is it before, and Control Z again gives us the after. Much better. Okay, so we'll call that good, and I'm going to rename that model body rather than model. So later on, when I come back to this, it'll make some sense to me. All right, now I'm going to turn on the top layer, the model copy, and let's rename it while we're thinking about renaming. And I'm going to rename this model hair. Again, quick selection tool, W. And I'm going to come around and drag around her hair. And remembering that we will need just a little bit of an overlap, I'm going to keep some of her forehead here. Um, I think I'll add her ears. I want to come down here and get close to her neck. So basically what I'm trying to do is get most of her hair. Now I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller by tapping the left bracket key. And I'm going to come out and get some of this, the springy curls that are right on the edge. Now no selection will be perfect. What you do is you get as good as you can. And back in when I first learned how to do this with a fine edge, we didn't want to get these small edges. We didn't want any background included. But now the a logarithm works a little bit differently, and it isn't as critical. And if you want to see what it looks like, there it is with quick mask. It overlays where I need it to. Here's a little place that I could put in. Let's see what happens if I get a really, really tiny brush. Nah, not much. It gets the whole thing. So let's just let it go at that. And we'll add a layer mask by clicking the layer mask icon. Now you can see I have cut off a whole lot of her little corkscrews. And that itself isn't too bad, but what happens if I put it on a background? Ooh, not looking too good. So at this moment, I'm going to let it stay. Well, I'm going to let it go for that, for what I'm doing. And then double click on this layer mask. Now, because we have already masked out the smooth shoulders and back, I don't have to worry about putting Smart Radius on to try and keep it smooth. I'm just going to play with the radius and I'm going to crank it way up there. And it takes a minute. Big file, and I'm recording. Okay, we're getting more of those little corkscrews. Let's see what happens if we go a little bit farther. Looking even better. Now let's look at this on black and white for the moment. Look at how nice this is, just the way it is. Look at all these edge details here. We can zoom in and, no, I guess we can't. Oh, we could zoom in, didn't work. So we've got all these edge details. So let's put it back on the layers. Now we still have a few problems, but we've got a lot of the corkscrews out of the way. Well, I'm going to try and get rid of some of this white here. And there was one area that I saw, actually I'm going to go back to black and white. Now there are some areas where the radius is too much. So I'm going to get the brush and make it just a little bit bigger with the right bracket key. Now I don't have to have anything in here. This can all be white. In through here. Because remember, this is where it's touching her skin, and we don't have any white spaces. Most of our loopy stuff is out beside. Now I'm hoping if I go into the black area and brush, I wish I knew how to change. Let's see what no. I wish I knew how to change color on this. I don't, and maybe I should do that before I do any tutorials. But nonetheless, it seems to be whatever color my foreground color is. It seems to be what color I'm brushing. Okay, so now we're going to get this tool up here. Now let's see here. It's called, come on, show me the name, the Refine Edge Brush Tool. And I want that to be just a little bit bigger than the areas that I want to get rid of. And I'm just tapping. And because this is all magnified, the girl is kind of jerky. So I'm going to demagnify her and then zoom in with my zoom tool. And I'm just going to brush over the areas that are white. And it's actually increasing the radius for me. So our background is showing through. Right about here, a little bit more here, a little bit more here. And we'll come in through here. And sometimes it gets a little behind you if you work fast. So I'm just basically brushing out those white areas. Actually, in these larger areas, I can get just a tad bit bigger. Okay. I am going to look with an onion skin. So I'm going to look at the onion skin. And the onion skin lets us see what we have in the background. I see here when the transparency is 100% and we let it out, we're missing just a little bit here. So I'm going to come out with my brush on these corkscrews that I've missed earlier. I see it's picked it up now. On the edges of these curls, okay, that needs a little work right there. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. These all seem to be good. Let's look down here. We're missing a few here. So we'll come out here and pull those. And sure enough, there they are. And we need just a little work right here and right here. And we'll put her back on the layers, just so we can make sure we get all the last of that white stuff out. Looks very good. So we'll say, okay. Now, you can output it either to the same layer mask you were working on, or you can have a new layer with a layer mask. I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm pretty happy with the way the mask looks. So now I'm going to look back here at the mask itself by holding Alt or Option as I click the mask. Now I do want my brush, and I want my black brush. Probably won't make a difference because we do have face underneath here from the other layer, but I do want to make sure that that's okay. Alrighty, and alter option will put it back. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit here. Now there's a little problem in here. We've got some white that we might not need. So let's go back to our brush and click X to make white the foreground color. Now there are places, maybe if I put a quick mask on it. Nope, didn't work. Like in here, that this isn't really the white of the background, that's the shiny of her hair. And we do, whoops, got a little too far there. So maybe we could see it better on the mask, like right in here. You want to be real careful, and maybe I should have a soft edge brush here. I hate to do it on the mask because I really can't see what's going on. But there are a few areas, like here we've lost hair when we really didn't want to. So we'll add it back in. And that's the function of the radius. And it's sad that that happens, but it happens. Okay, I see we've got a little problem here and there with still some white showing. And yes, this takes a little bit longer. So if we go back into our mask and make sure that we have our our radius brush on, we can get that looking a little bit better. And actually, if you're careful with your background, this level of detail isn't really necessary. Now I'll do that half, and I'm going to leave the other half alone. And let me show you what I mean. Now this dark background, even though it does have the blue tones, really isn't the best for the job. It shows all the white areas and it looks kind of cruddy. Let's put in a solid color mask behind that. Well, this blue, just the difference between the graduated grayish blue and the blue makes this rim light around her body look much more attractive. So if I had to choose between the two of these, I would choose the blue because she is reflecting blue light and that you would expect a blue. However, I found another background that worked even better. I put these white bokeh strips behind her, and now it doesn't matter if we don't have all those white things out of there because, quite frankly, she's got white in the background. So I could just smooth those things right over. And now that she's got white in the background, it really doesn't matter because it could be showing through. So I really recommend, and I should have done it this way to show you, but I really recommend that you have your background behind your subject before you start masking, and you can see what looks good and what doesn't. Now, we wasted a lot of time trying to make this one look good when we really didn't need to. We could just use this one. Now, the one last thing that I might try just a teeny bit is to change her dress to a blue. just to keep the blue theme. Well, let's see what happens. Let's grab our quick selection tool and quick select this dress. And when we select too much, we use Alt or Option to unselect it. Looks pretty good. Let's zoom in here. Do a quick mask. We've got too much here and not enough here. Oops, let's get a brush. That works so much better. A black brush will let us add. Actually, and a white brush will let us take away. Actually, that must be just a shadow of her dress. I had the dress selected good there. And then we've got a little bit too much here. We've got arm and not dress. And we could use just a little bit more here. And again, I'm going into the straight area, and then I can come back with my white brush, click, and then just shift click back. Okay, tap Q again. And let's add now, because I'm working on her bodice, I have to go back to the body one. And I'm going to add a hue and saturation. Maybe I wouldn't have to go back because it will be masked. And you can see the only thing I can change color on is her dress. So let's add a little blue color to that. Whoops. Not caring for that so much, so let's try colorize. Okay, there's a good color, but let's see if we can darken it just a little bit. And do we want it any brighter? I don't think I like it any brighter. I think I'm going to leave it fairly desaturated and fairly dark. So there we go. We've gone from this to this relatively easily. So you have a great day, and I will talk to you another time.